Alright, we're back again. Welcome back. And today we're gonna work on the suitcase, which is this piece here. And what I want to say right now is that it is something that has high details to it, and it's gonna be really fun to create it. And then, of course, you're gonna learn a great deal of new things if you are a beginner. So, like this video, subscribe, and let's do this. Alright, in this video we're gonna show you how to create a suitcase in 3ds Max, and we're gonna learn a lot of primitive skills, and we're gonna teach you how to, as I said before, using primitive skills, creating something that is gonna be interesting. And we're gonna start off with something simple, which is in this case a plane, and we're gonna change the color a little bit and of course apply material to it in order to see some nice and cool effects as we do the modeling. We're gonna apply the shell modifier, which is a modifier that is gonna give thickness to the plane that we created. And of course this is a very important step. Then we could have just created a box and it did the same thing and got the same results. So now we are gonna try to use the connect tool in order to create some segments inside, and this is gonna be is gonna allow us to define some details, some of the big details in this suitcase model. So next, as you can see here, as you can see me doing here, applying the chamfer tool, we can chamfer the edges in order to get smooth round edges. And as we are advancing in this this modeling part, we are gonna do some simple stuff that are gonna help us receive or get a lot of good results as we advance. Okay, we are trying to scale this side a little bit in order to get something smooth in the bottom. Alright, maybe we're gonna try to move these vertices a little bit closer to each other, because even though it seems nice, we need to bring them closer or push them apart depending on the situation. And the scaling tool is actually pretty nice. It can do a pretty good job at this. So now we are trying to increase the height of that plate and convert it to a box. And of course this is gonna be a very important piece that we're gonna see it in the front, so we better pay more attention to it. Of course, we're gonna use some simple modeling techniques like the ring connect and the extrude method, and of course you're going to use some chamfering. As you can see here, I'm trying to extrude this box, which is extrude that polygon in this area of the box. And some of these techniques I do repeat them a lot, so talking about them so many times may be difficult on me, and I will try to make it as easy as possible, even though for me it seems like telling you that water is water, which doesn't make sense because everybody knows what water is. Oh my days with these things are endless. So please don't expect me to explain every little thing I'm doing here, because it's too difficult for me. I try to talk about the in a long tutorial like this about the mindset and the skills that you need, and the tools in general, and of course I'm not trying to neglect these technical aspects of the modeling and stuff, but it gets too repetitive too quickly. So actually talking about it talking about every step I'm taking is kind of boring to me and to you guys if you are used to watching my tutorials. So as you can see here, I'm trying to separate this part from the other parts because it's gonna be unique, and of course we're gonna work on it further. And as you can see here, I'm using the cut tool in order to connect some of the vertices, and you can use other techniques as well if you need to. For example, you can use the connect tool, or you can actually delete some of the polygons and bridge them. Now we're gonna close this area because it's no longer necessary that we keep this open. I'm actually right now recording this tutorial outdoors, so it's a little bit cold out here. And yeah, as you can see here, we're going to use this box here and push out some of the vertices in order to give it that smooth look right there. Alright, so now we're gonna add something interesting as well, using these shapes that we have on the on 3ds Max, which is the handle that is gonna be used in order to close or just attach the upper part of the suitcase and the lower part. The length is kind of actually depends on how the upper part is gonna fit in with the lower part, so this distance is probably gonna change anyways. So as you can see here, we're gonna create a duplicate, which is a mirror or something, or a copy that is gonna be mirrored, and we're gonna attach them together. Of course, we're gonna weld these vertices together and fuse them. And the next step is actually to give this some thickness, which is extremely important in order to convert a shape into a 3D object. So now we are selecting these polygons right here in order to create some of the nice effects that we want to be on this part. So we're gonna extrude this part a little bit out in order to let it stand out and give us some nice details. This is not gonna be too much, so we're trying to keep it as low as possible. So we probably need to weld these vertices together because the starting point we want it to have 0 height. So as you can see here, we're welding these vertices together, which is a nice effect or a nice technical detail that I like. Right now we are working on, as you can see here, working on the next piece, which is going to be important as well. So uh, as a starting point, we are modifying the previous base of the as I was saying, we used the previous piece as a base or as a starting point, and this is good most of the time because it's gonna allow us to gain some time and avoid repetition. Okay, we are using these kind of screws or bolts. We're using them and we're trying to copy them to the other piece. Alright, we're gonna do some rotation right there in order to push this on the side. Alright, now using this plane we're gonna create the handle or the main handle of this suitcase. So this is gonna be a little bit tricky, but we're gonna be able to extrude these edges using, of course, the holding shift and move tool or rotate or scale, whatever. And we are gonna actually we are actually going to uh, kind of smooth things out a little bit because it seems too solid on the edges. So tempering this end is gonna be a very smart thing to do because it's not that hard edge. But there seems to be a problem with the proportion of this handle because um, because it doesn't feel right. So now I'm gonna add some extra edges in order uh, to to make it look more real. Let's just say. Of course, this handle is is gonna be taking the shape we want very soon. So we are going to actually give it the shell modifier, as you can see here, which is gonna give it some thickness, and we're gonna convert the Adobe Poly and apply later the symmetry modifier in order to duplicate it to the other side. Alright, we are trying to do some chamfering over here because it seems that this handle needs to be a little bit softer than I expected. That's why we are applying the chamfer modifier everywhere. Alright, right now this suitcase is actually getting the look that we are aiming for, and now we are gonna add some major detail here, which is actually extruding some of the outer edges and the outer faces in order to make it stand out even more. Or we could have just extruded in the opposite side of the selection, which could have worked fine as well. Alright, sometimes we need to make some major modification on the pieces we created previously in order to save or to maintain that proportion. Alright, now it is time to add some interesting detail as well, which is those lines on the top, and of course we're trying to push the inner lines in every kind of in every set of, there are gonna be set of lines actually, so every line there is gonna be carved to the inside. Alright, now we are trying to smooth out the look of these new details. Alright, now we are trying to add other pieces, and of course the starting point is always going to be something like a plane, because it's easy to modify and it's not very hard to create. Okay, so this is gonna be kind of an external piece that is gonna be on top, and I really like working on such models, specifically if this is gonna be a lot more complicated than this one, because as we advance, we put our hands on even more interesting details that are gonna be helping us to kind of get a lot of kind of subtle details, and this leads to having fun as we see the details unfold in front of us, and to see the model kind of progressing specifically. And when we work on that thing, and we leave it for example, a few hours, and we come back to it and realize how much we did and how much we worked on it, and kind of the joy you feel when you see your work and the results you're getting. Specifically, if you're not it actually works always, whether you are a beginner or a professional. And this is one of the strongest forces that allows you to keep moving forward and to do art. Actually seeing the results and the pleasure you take from it, and of course the pleasure you receive when people notice your work and talk about it and tell you how great it is. All right, as you can see here, I'm trying to use another floating piece on in the back, which is this one is extremely important as well, because there's gonna be a permanent link between the upper and the lower parts of the suitcase. So there are gonna be a lot of bolts on top or screws, and of course it's not gonna be difficult to create. We're using the cylinder as a link between the upper and the lower sides. It looks a lot better than I expected when we kind of apply the turbo smooth on it, and see what the final result is. So now it's time to copy some of these pieces to the other sides of the suitcase. Let's take a look around and see what we have done. Okay, let's copy them as a whole, and of course we're gonna reverse it because this is gonna be the upper part, and it's gonna be different than the lower part, and in many ways. For example, the first thing, the height is not gonna be the same, so we're gonna try to fix this very quickly. We're gonna select all the vertices necessary or that are gonna be affected, bring the height down, deselect some of the vertices that we don't want to move once again, using Alt, moving down like this, and we're gonna do it a third time. We could have actually used the scale tool, but the downside of using the scale tool is that it's gonna scale down everything, and there are some areas we don't want to scale. That was why I used manual scaling. Alright, so now in order to get something pleasant when we apply a smoothie modifier, we want to actually connect some of these vertices to keep things clean, not messy. Alright, that was not something difficult at all. So the modeling of this suitcase is almost done, and the next thing we're gonna do is just work on is just working on some supporting edges, which is not gonna take that much time, but it is very important in order to see something interesting. It seems like the handle is a little bit bigger than it should be, so we probably need to kind of push it back a little bit. It seems that trying to put this in the right place is gonna be a little bit difficult because we don't know what is actually the real height that is gonna allow us to fit that that small handle on the lock, and how it's gonna fit properly. Alright, let's take a final close look at the back, and of course we need to complete this area right here quickly. And we are pretty much done with the modeling, so let's jump and do some supporting edges. Alright, now it's time to work on some supporting edges, and of course this process is actually going to allow us to see what is the potential of this model and how it's going to look like once we are done. So we're going to start off with adding some lines on the edges to support and to prevent any kind of soft areas, and we want to create hard edges basically using this process. And it is of course something repetitive, something easy to do, and something very important. There are alternatives like using a chamfering tool or chamfer modifier in order to do that for us very quickly using what we call the smoothing groups to identify where things are going to be hard and where they're not. So as you can see here, I'm trying to kind of support the edges and the areas where we need things to be solid, not soft. And this is basically a way to tell 3ds Max where are the hard edges and where are the soft edges. And basically in a model like this, most of the edges are going to be not most of them, but there is a great deal of hard edges here because this is a hard surface modeling, and in this type of modeling we gonna expect to do a lot of these things. So this is not something new to you if you are this type of modeler, and if you are kind of someone who likes to model organic stuff like human beings and creatures, animals, you're probably not gonna do that at all. And of course, this is highly repetitive, so probably I'm not gonna talk about everything you're gonna see, because you probably saw it before, and I don't wanna repeat myself too much. Probably in the future, you're not gonna see me doing this too much because when I'm working on low poly models for games, I am going to use actually the smoothing or the chamfering tools to do this for me, because the high poly model is actually going to be kind of a, a tool in order to imprint the high details on the low poly model. So it doesn't really matter how much density is there in the high poly mesh. That's why if actually this model is not gonna be for games, it's probably wise to use supporting edges. But if not, if it is for if it is for purposes of creating low poly model for games, it's better actually to use smoothing or actually a chamfering modifier in order to do that quickly, because as we said before, the high poly model is not gonna be there in the game, so it's okay to add as many supporting edges or supporting edges that are gonna come from the chamfering tool anyways. And you don't have to be perfect at this because it is something that you're gonna have to do over and over again until until you become able to do it perfectly. All right, as you can see here, we're making good progress over here, and it seems like this process is actually enhancing the look of our model completely, and it is actually very powerful. All right, sometimes we forget to kind of connect some of the vertices in this model, and of course we need to reconnect them back in order to avoid any kind of distortions when we apply a smoothie modifier, when we apply the turbo smooth modifier. Okay, this high poly version looks very clear and very clean when we apply to it these supporting edges. Alright, we are looking for areas where we probably forgot to support, and there are quite a few of these are left and done, so it's gonna be very quick to do them. Of course, we need to kind of try to look for all these places, and we don't want to forget any of these in order to avoid going back and fixing and in the final stages of the texturing and stuff, or the bacon, whatever you're gonna do with your model. You're gonna forget. You're gonna find yourself that you forgot some areas or some pieces that you should have not forgot, which is gonna be kind of mentally difficult to go back and do the job that you have done before. So we are done with this tutorial. So subscribe, like this video, and I will see you in the next episode.